Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's Tuesday, February 8th. And on Tuesdays, we get to talk a little bit of politics. So it's going to be an exciting day. Robb Ryerse, hunkered down somewhere outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Doug Pagitt here outside of Minneapolis. And we have Annie Andrews, who's running for Congress in South Carolina. Annie, we always start with a little roundup of the weather because I live in a cold place. And, you know, that's all we have to talk about. But it's going to be 40 today. And the meteorologists are saying that it won't be below zero again. That's their promise. I mean, until, a few months from now when it's next winter. Rob, how's the weather where you find yourself?
We got about a foot of snow, which is a really big deal here in Arkansas. And it is still on the ground, but rapidly melting. And it's going to be like 58 degrees today. So it's sunny and beautiful, and the snow is going to be going away. But got to take Whimsy sledding, so that was a big deal. Big deal.
Yes, it is. Annie, how about you? South Carolina, what are we looking at today? Mid-70s, slight breeze out of the south, that kind of thing?
That's what you would think. It's actually a little cold and gloomy today.
All right. Well, you did not sign up to be the new weather forecaster, but you did say as a doctor, currently as a doctor pediatrician, that you want to be a congressperson. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we're big fans of that. We think it's great. Tell us about that. I already alluded to the fact that you're a doctor. You're married to a doctor. You have 3 children. You have a very busy life, and in the midst of that, you've said, but I think I can serve this country by being the next congressperson from South Carolina.
Yeah, so you're right. I'm a mom of 3 small kids. My kids are 10, 7, and 5, married to another physician. I've been a pediatrician at the Children's Hospital here in Charleston for over a decade. It's really my role as a pediatrician at the Children's Hospital, and also my viewpoint as a mother, that led me to want to serve in this way. So at the Children's Hospital, I see up close and personal the challenges families in the Lowcountry are facing. I see kids who are not getting the quality education they deserve simply by the fact that they were born into the wrong zip code. I see kids who are hungry. Unfortunately, I see kids who have been shot. Mm-hmm. And as a mother, I look at our leaders, our elected officials, let's call them, and I'm embarrassed. I don't want my kids to look up to those people. We need leaders who have character and a moral compass, and leaders I can point to and show my kids. And so sort of the confluence of all of those factors that led me to decide to raise my hand and try to win this seat.
When did that strike you? Have you been like hinting in your mind with a little politics here and there, or did this come to you in a particular moment? What got you here?
So it all evolved pretty quickly, but it started actually shortly after the shooting in Parkland, Florida. My oldest child was in kindergarten then. And right after that shooting, when I was dropping her off at school, I noticed the armed police officer patrolling the drop-off line. And then my baby got out of the car, walking into the school, having no idea. And I felt just so vulnerable in that moment. That really sparked my community activism and advocacy on the issue of gun violence prevention. So after the Parkland shooting, I felt really helpless as a mom. And I joined Moms Demand Action in my community. And I learned a lot about how I could help my community as a mom and a pediatrician through my work in that organization. And I learned a lot. I started paying attention more to what was happening in my state up in Columbia, South Carolina. I started speaking up and testifying for and against bills that affect child health. And the more I did that, the more I realized the people who are at the table making these decisions are not well informed. A lot of them aren't there for the right reasons. And if they can be lawmakers, certainly I am qualified to be a lawmaker.
Yeah. We often have this idea that elected officials know something that we don't. They've got a level of expertise that we don't have. There's something special about them. And the reality is there's not. No. Remember in Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, she talks about, realizing that nobody at the table was smarter than she was.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. And the
Yeah.
thing that frustrated me so much was, especially with COVID, like not only do they not understand the problem, they're not trying to understand the problem. They're not
Mm.
seeking out expertise. And even so far as when expertise comes to testify in front of them, they ignore it. So they're not operating in good faith. But yeah, that part of becoming really stuck out to me too, really
Yeah.
resonated with me.
Yeah.
So what we're quite fascinated with, like the moments of change that people have when they realize the common good is something that they don't just aspire to, but they're going to organize their lives around working toward in some way or the other, whether no matter what occupation they're in. And when someone thinks, "Hey, I think I want to run for office," for you at the federal level, or people that want to run at the state level or county level, or I guess even at the school board level, that negotiation that goes on in your mind. Can you bring us back into some of that? How that went? How many internal ping pongs you had back and forth of the thises and the that's? Can you just talk a bit about that whole process?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Like I said, it was sort of an accelerated time course from when the idea was first planted to when I decided to just go for it. But it was a lot of back and forth. The first conversation I had was with my mom, and she was like, I believe in what you're doing and what you're fighting for, and I'm so proud of you, but you've got small kids, and is this the right time to do this? So that I really, she's my most trusted advisor. So I took what she said very seriously. And then I continued to just have a series of conversations with people, other physicians across the country, and also the lawmakers in my state, and my friends, and my husband, and my kids. And I kept waiting for that moment. I kept thinking one morning I'm going to wake up and think, what was I thinking? I'm not running for Congress. That was crazy. But that just never happened. And I just kept I just have this internal drive to do this. I don't know, I don't really understand where it came from, but wasn't going away. And, I'm very fortunate to have the privilege to have a husband who has a great job. And, I'm able to step back from my career a little bit to do this. I have the support of my parents and my husband and my kids. And so I'm very lucky to be in the position to even have had the opportunity to make this choice. But it was a lot of internal dialogue. And as a woman in medicine, I'm used to feeling imposter syndrome. Do I really belong in this room? Am I good enough for this? And it's interesting to see those imposter syndrome feelings just carry over to politics. And so it was a lot of, wait, can I do this? Will people take me seriously? But I've been experiencing imposter syndrome as a woman in medicine for a long time. So I know how to handle those thoughts. And I have a great network of other women physicians who have really rallied around me and helped combat that imposter syndrome.
That's awesome. What surprised you about running for office? Has there been something about the process, about what it's been like, that you're like, oh, I just never imagined it was going to be this way? Or maybe something that, take our listeners or viewers inside a little bit, give them a sense of oh, you never believe this. You never have any idea it was like this.
Well, so an interesting switch for me, a couple of things. One is so much time is spent raising money, which I think really does a disservice to the whole country, but that is the system we are in. So sadly, I'm spending a lot of time raising money when you envision you're going to be spending time out there just shaking hands, walking in parades, waving to people. And it's not really what it's like.
Nope. On the phone asking people for money.
Yes. Yes. And, I talked to a couple, lawmakers who, said it's hard to ask for money when you think you're asking, please give Annie Andrews money, but you're asking for money to support these things you believe in. And it's this common cause we're all working towards. And so if you reframe that, it's a little bit easier to ask people for money. The other interesting piece is, I was pretty active on social media before the campaign, really from my perspective as a pediatrician and a gun violence prevention advocate in my community. And I used to be able to just see something that bothered me and fire off a tweet and move on with my day. And it's interesting to now have to be, pretty careful about what I'm putting out there and what I'm responding to. And so that's been a little bit of a change for me.
Yeah. What is it about, your district and particularly your current representative that you felt it necessary for you to run? I mean, your opponent, or your Republican opponent, the incumbent in your district, is a new congressperson. I think this is her first term, and so what is it about? Because she's not like. She's not infamous like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Matt Gaetz or one of those folks, but what is it about the situation that makes you feel like, oh, I got to jump into this because somebody else needs to do this job?
Yeah, so interestingly, she probably doesn't realize this, but my current congresswoman and I have met once before. I went to her office in Columbia with some of my Moms Demand Action friends and partners to talk about a bad gun bill. This was several years ago. And it was just me and a few other moms trying to have an honest conversation about our concerns for our kids' safety. And she blew us off. She wouldn't sit down. She stormed out of her room and said, I haven't read the bill, but I'm a Second Amendment gal. And that memory, of course, in that moment, I never envisioned I'd be running against her for Congress. I mean, she was a state lawmaker and I was a mom and a pediatrician at the time. But I mean, that seared on my memory that, she wasn't interested in hearing what I had to say as a constituent. So again, I go back to, I want a leader my kids can look up to. And like you said, she's not as infamous as some of the other folks serving in Congress right now, but her voting record is really terrible. And, she's put some stuff out there that I would not let my kids read or see. She is not, my district is very moderate. It is purple. It was red for a long time. It flipped blue in 2018. We had the great Congressman Joe Cunningham, who really represented the district in a bipartisan way. And that's what this district needs. And, when she ran, she really campaigned like she was going to be another, bipartisan voice for the Low Country. And I think she had the potential to be that. But unfortunately, she got up there and very quickly just kind of went to her partisan corner. She voted against the infrastructure bill for the Low Country. If you've ever been here, there's bridges everywhere. There is water everywhere. We see the effects of climate change every day. The streets flood on sunny days down here. We need infrastructure funding. And that was a bipartisan bill. And to me, if you can't vote to fix our bridges and roads because of your partisan politics, you are not serving the people who sent you up there.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us about the Low Country. I've never heard that phrase. Apparently, I don't know my South Carolina terminology well enough. What does that mean what are you referencing when you say Low Country?
Yeah, so it's just this region sort of up and down the coast of South Carolina, down towards the border of Georgia, and it's just beautiful marshland everywhere. Where we are at or below sea level, essentially. It is the most beautiful part of the country I have ever seen. I am lucky to live here, but we are incredibly vulnerable. The hospital I work at is on the Charleston Peninsula, which is covered, of course, on three sides by water. I'll be rounding on patients on a sunny day. I'll look out the patient's window and there's standing water on the roads because the peninsula is sinking and folks can't get to their medical appointments. It shuts down our economy. And it is not hard to see the effects of climate change down here in the Low Country. And it's a unique and beautiful part of the country that we need to focus on preserving.
Can you talk a bit about that? We did a bike ride from raising awareness around our border issues. So we rode from California to Florida. And a big piece of that was bicycling along the coast after we got off the border. And so that would have been the southern coast, and you all obviously are on the eastern coast. But coastlands are different, aren't they? Like there's a coastal community that has a different vibe that maybe a lot of us only know because we vacation there or something. But once you slow down or spend a little bit of time, there's a temperament and a personality around coastal life, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think that's why my husband and I have stayed here. We're both from the Midwest. I grew up in Indianapolis. He grew up in Cleveland. We went to medical school in Cincinnati. And We moved down here just thinking we would stay for his training, but we fell in love. I remember he lived here a year before I did, and he would text me the views driving home from the hospital, the beautiful views of the coastline. And yes, there is just something about living near the water and being exposed to this natural beauty that it lowers my blood pressure. I know when I'm feeling stressed, if I make a point to drive out and walk on the beach, I will immediately feel more relaxed. So, that attracts a certain type of person to live in this area. People who are looking for that element of, that the outdoors to be a part of their life, that are really seeking a really true like work-life balance. And so I think that if you spend any time in the Charleston area in the Low Country, you will see it. It's a great place. So many friendly people, the same friendliness of the Midwest, but with this sort of the Southern charm.
Yeah,
and it's really just a great, great place to live.
And at the same time, and this is what I was struck by when we spending more time there and not being there on vacation, you start to also realize that even living in paradise, things can be really hard on people. And it almost has a multiplier effect, right? Where like if you live where I do and you look outside and it's cloudy and snowy and cold, you think, I'm going to get to the sun and someday it's going to be better. But sometimes when you live in a beautiful place and you still have those struggles, it reminds you that like the structures have to change. You can't just change your location for a moment.
That is such an interesting perspective. And I totally agree with you. And it made me think of this project I've done at work. So, people think about Charleston, South Carolina, and they think about the beauty and they think about the, Rainbow Row and these like pastel colored old traditional houses and the cobblestone streets and the horse-drawn carriages. But, a couple miles from that tourist part of the city is North Charleston. And North Charleston is plagued by violence, food deserts, poverty. And so we make it a point every year when we have our new pediatric trainees come, and they move from all over the country to work for 3 years at the Children's Hospital. And a lot of them have only ever known the Charleston that I just described, the beaches and, the old Southern culture. So we spend a whole day with them opening up their eyes to the real community that makes up Charleston. And that just a couple miles down the road, you have people living in extreme poverty, crumbling schools, no access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And so, yes, I love that beautiful part of Charleston, but you can't have that without addressing all those problems that everyone else is experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Annie, can you give us a perspective as both a candidate for office and as a doctor, as a pediatrician, about where we're at in the COVID pandemic right now, and what sense you have about what policies could make a difference beyond just beyond, hey, everybody ought to get vaccinated and you ought to wear a mask. Do you have any sense of that intersection of being a doctor and a candidate for office? And can you talk to us about the pandemic from that intersection?
Yeah, so I think, that's another one of the things that really drove me to get into this race is watching how politics was injected into this public health crisis. And I've said before that, if you went back in time to the very beginning of the pandemic, when we were all, listening to our public health officials, we all had this sense of community, I think, as a country that, we're facing this together. If we had introduced the concepts of, vaccination and universal masking right then, I think we all would have jumped on board because we had this like common sense of this enemy, which was the virus. But then very quickly we became, we started seeing each other as the enemy. And our leaders were not modeling appropriate public health responses. And as a physician, I know I speak
that was said so tactfully. Sorry to interrupt, but that was fantastic.
That's okay. Yes, so injecting bleach into your veins is not an appropriate public health response. But I think it's been incredibly frustrating, and I know I speak for many of my colleagues, adult doctors, pediatricians, that the public's trust in the medical community has really been challenged. because of our elected officials modeling of that. And I see it every day. And, it's infuriating to me. I'll give you an example of a patient. I took care of a patient a couple months ago who has been in and out of our hospital for as long as I've worked there because she has a complex genetic condition. Against all odds, and with so much love and care from her family, she has survived well beyond we thought she would. And then a few months ago, she got admitted to the hospital with a very serious COVID infection. She ended up spending over a week in the ICU. She was very critically ill. And I was at her bedside talking to her mom, and, her mom was not vaccinated and the child was not vaccinated, this incredibly high-risk child. And, your initial response might be to be angry with the mom for making that choice. But that mom is a victim of the misinformation that's out there. She is a victim of people playing politics with public health. It's not her fault that she was, fed misinformation that led her to believe that the safer choice for her very vulnerable child was to not vaccinate her. And we almost lost this little girl. And it was heartbreaking. So these people who go on cable news and spread this misinformation or disinformation because it's going to get them donors or it's going to get them more followers on Twitter. Like, there are, in every community, in every children's hospital, every hospital across the country, there are people who are suffering, real life suffering because of that. And that, as a pediatrician, that just boils my blood. So I am optimistic, though, that this has led, it's not just me as a pediatrician who's decided to throw my hat into the ring. There are doctors and other scientists all over this country who are kind of done with what's happening, the intersection of science and politics.
Well, I've worried since the start of all of this, so now it's approaching 2 years when we were starting to hear about it and thinking a little bit, do we have to do something different in our society? And the big worry 2 years ago was that we didn't want to overwhelm the health system. I'm sure you as a doctor can tell us about how overwhelmed the health system is. And it's getting even worse because people are leaving the health profession. They're not coming in. There's a backlog of nurses and nursing training. For someone to become a physician's assistant or a doctor takes so long and so much expense and so much recruitment that's not happening. I'm a little shocked, actually, that we haven't taken on an attitude to build out our health system. It's almost as if we said, this is the best health system we're going to have, so let's try to control disease to not overwhelm the health system, instead of spending these last 2 years. And even in the Build Back Better, there's really nothing in there to add 50,000 square feet to every hospital, to fund more nurses to be able to get through the project sooner. There seems to be nothing happening on the delivery side of the healthcare system. And there's so much messaging going on trying to prevent disease. So anyway, that's me talking there. Do you have any thoughts about that? Rarely do we get people who know politics as well as you do and medicine. Am I missing something, or is that really a crucial problem?
It is a crucial problem. Our healthcare system has been incredibly strained because of the pandemic. And you're right, we have nursing shortages. I think probably in every community in this country, there's a nursing shortage. People are leaving that profession. Plenty of doctors are burnt out. They don't feel supported. The reasons they went into medicine are hard to see when you have patients yelling at you because you suggest that they get the vaccine. It's a really stressful time to be in healthcare. And, even before the pandemic, we had rural hospitals closing all over this country. Sure. We have so many people who fall into that gap of not qualifying for Medicaid, but not having access to private insurance. We have a mental health crisis that has only gotten worse with COVID. We have emergency departments that are full of people with opioid addictions because of our failures on policy at that level, and the mental health crisis and the gun violence healthcare crisis. So it is a hard time to be in healthcare. And you're right. I think that's also really interesting framing to say, we're talking so much about disease control, but why not bolster our healthcare system? And, I think that's a complex problem, but it's one that we are not addressing head on yet.
Yeah. I mean, you probably have a lot on your agenda, but when you're a congresswoman, if you'd champion the 1 million nurses project and help the federal government help to fund and to create programs, because I mean, I don't need to tell you, you know how hard it is to get people through nursing school. I think there's like one nursing candidate accepted for every 150 applicants because there aren't enough spaces in nursing schools. And it just feels like, boy, that's the kind of thing you could solve at a federal level, right? Like you really could increase the amount of nursing schools. So it just, I don't know it. And then we just end up yelling at each other because we're not behaving well. And I do my fair share of that. And, you know, we really want people to get vaccinated, and, or we just talk about the insurance side, like if we would pay for healthcare some other way. But look, you start paying for healthcare for everybody on a Medicare for all kind of plan, which would be great, I think. You're going to have more people trying to visit doctors and nurses and clinics and hospitals, and there's literally not the capacity for it. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but it feels like we have a public health crisis, and we're only addressing the disease containment side rather than the treatment side to all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you think about nurses who are working overtime and asked to work way more shifts than they ever expected to.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're still paying off their nursing school loans. They're not feeling valued at their employer. I mean, it's time for a comprehensive look at our healthcare system. We have a crisis in pediatrics where there's not enough pediatric subspecialists. Our developmental pediatricians here in Charleston who see kids with autism and other developmental disorders, they have a 2-year wait list. Do you know what can change in a child's life in 2 years? We have a crisis because these folks, you know, they're not going to do a fellowship if at the end of the day, like they're not going to make any more money than they would if they were a general pediatrician. So there's so many, I mean, that's why we need doctors and nurses in the room. We don't need just the insurance company and pharmacy company lobbyists writing our healthcare laws. We need people who have worked in the system.
So Annie, so well said. And you know, we think you're one of those people that needs to be in the room. And so, you know, if somebody's listening, if somebody's watching and they say like, okay, this sounds really great, I'm super impressed. How can they help out? Where do they go? What do they do? You know, this is shameless plug time. You know.
Well, I love that. So my campaign website is drannieandrews.com. We launched our campaign back in November with this incredible launch video that I'm really proud of. So if people want to get a better sense of sort of who I am and what I stand for, watch that launch video. There's an opportunity to sign up to volunteer for our campaign, and you can volunteer from anywhere. We're going to need people to text bank and make phone calls. And so sign up to volunteer. Certainly there's a button there to donate to the campaign, as I said at the top, but you know, so much of this is dependent on our ability to fundraise. This is a very winnable seat. This is a seat that could help us determine who holds power in the House in 2022. I have a very vulnerable incumbent. We have a really strong campaign, and I think it's time for more doctors and other scientists to serve in government at all levels. And this is a great opportunity to take a step in that direction.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. We think it's so great that you're running. We'd love to come help any way that we can. I'm sure other people would too. So thanks for running. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Dr. Annie Andrews, going to be the Congresswoman out of that Charleston area of South Carolina. See ya.
The Low Country.
Low Country.
So great. Isn't she amazing? She's fantastic.
She's top shelf. Just really great. You know, and it just feels like this is the time more than ever to have certain expertise in our politics. Yes. You know, for a long time, politics felt like business expertise was important, and military expertise used to seem like it was important. Like everybody who ran for office also had a military background, because we believe that, you know, the training of people in violent trauma-producing situations makes them good leaders. Well, now we're in a situation where the things you know when you're trained in health and public health are the kinds of things that make you a certain sort of leader that makes you particularly good in leadership and in politics right now. So yeah.
Well said.
She's really great.
I think you're exactly right. And you know, we have the opportunity to meet a lot of candidates around the country, and you know, I'm so often just tremendously impressed with their intelligence, their humility, how articulate they are about the issues. Um, Now I'm I'm often, what's the opposite of impressed? I'm often deeply sometimes deeply disappointed
Saddened.
by wow. um,
Yeah.
and then somebody comes along like Annie, and you just think, I want this person in Congress.
Yeah.
And she's one of those people that I just have that sense of like, wow, I want this person to be in Congress.
Yeah, and look, we need we need Congress to be better at doing what they do. They need to be best around there, and that's a thing they do. Because as we will talk about for our next 28 minutes here, that's not so much what we got right now on some occasions. Now, look, there's some good people. There's some good
both
people caught
sides?
in bad situations.
Oh.
There are, and then there's Republicans. No, I'm just kidding. There are really good people trying to make things better.
Yeah.
And there are people working on all manner of things that we know, you and I and listeners would know nothing about. I don't mean like in secret, but they just care about and are working on projects and things that like we've never even didn't even know that was a dealio, right? Like there's a lot of reasons people ran for Congress, and a lot of reasons that are brought to their desks once they're in that seat that they're worrying about and caring about. We tend around here to think as much about how that job is being done as the particularities of it, because there's something about, and even the way Dr. Andrews said it there, she said, I want there to be leaders that my kids can look up to. And then she said, well, let's call them elected officials. And that little thing that we all do, like, are we supposed to call our elected officials our leaders? Are they leading us, or are they just serving a role? Right. This is a real thing that we ask about, and it's, and not everybody has the same view on it. I actually think that being one of, 538 elected officials to Congress, or to be in the executive branch as an elected official, that just naturally and by din of the role is a leadership position in our society, right? So of course they are. So they should live up to it, right? And anyone, many of us, I would dare say, all of us are leaders in some capacity. There's someone who looks up to us in some way, and we lead them. And so often, man, what is going on with this current nuttiness that has been the deep infection in our system since 2015, when Donald Trump came down that escalator? It has just been a blood infection in the blood of democracy that continues to really, I think, put in jeopardy a lot of our. I don't think our democracy will die. Personally, I think it's got too much strength to it. I think it's got a perpetual ability to live. But even if it doesn't die, like death is not the only downside. It could be so unhealthy as a body politic that it's really harmful, that it's really damaging. So I think we shouldn't be like democracy is over as the only standard by which we get freaked out. I think there's this whole other question about is it healthy enough to actually be performing in the world in a way that serves the U.S. citizens and global citizens. Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, who popped to their senses this week?
Who popped to their senses this week?
Mike Pence.
Mike Pence
just woke up and had a little epiphany. Now, look, we're going to play this video that if you follow politics, you've heard. If you don't follow politics, instead you wait for our Tuesday podcast, congratulations.
Yeah.
Then you might not know yet that Mike Pence was speaking to a group of people called the Federalist Society, which is a group of lawyers, very libertarian leaning lawyers who are basically responsible for all the judges that got vetted when Trump worked off of a list for Supreme Court judges and federal court judges. It was from the Federalist Society. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. and Pence was giving prepared remarks. I think this is important. It wasn't a Q&A, it wasn't a response, it wasn't talking over the din of a helicopter blade. It was him in prepared remarks saying a couple of things that are I have rarely agreed with Mike Pence. I mean, occasionally on the quality of the apple pecan chicken salad from Wendy's, which I'm sure he loves, and that it's 10:37 Central Time. I would agree with him on those things. So yeah, we can come together and agree on some things. And I would agree with him on this.
And I heard this week that President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. But President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
That, I'm telling you, the President Trump is wrong, to put it in the present tense.
Yep.
Not only to say President Trump said something, I don't agree with him. I didn't have it. No. Or President Trump was wrong when he said it. I mean, I've just imagined 1,000 ads running of President Trump is wrong about kids in cages. President Trump is wrong about taxes. President Trump is wrong about the insurrection. Like, just hashtag President Trump is wrong. There it is from Mike Pence, right? That kind of was just, I thought, good. Okay. I mean, rarely will I give this guy kudos, right? But good for him. If he's going to say it, he said it.
Yeah. It's just an evergreen statement. President Trump is wrong. It's just always, it's just evergreen, just always there. It is what it is. I am that I am. President Trump is wrong. Just kind of sits there. It's just so amazing to me that Mike Pence feels compelled to say and has to say, and is noteworthy because it's controversial, that he said that no one person can overturn the presidential election, that a presidential election belongs to the American people. Like, when did this become controversial?
Yes.
When did this become the kind of statement that pits you against anybody in our country?
And he even doubled down. You're right, because after he says President Trump is wrong, then he says, in fact, something like, there is nothing more un-American than the notion that one person will pick the president. He in one paragraph he said President Trump is wrong and it is un-American what he is saying. Now, you could try to parse his words and say, no, he pivoted to another comment and he was saying no one was asking Mike Pence to pick the president. All we were asking Mike Pence to do was to delay the certification, yada, yada, yada. But you don't follow up, President Trump is wrong, I had no right, and there's nothing more un-American. He gets, this is not a break in the wall. This is not a sign that things are getting better. This is not a Mike Pence has had a true wake up moment. But Mike Pence decided to say not what happened on January 6th, 2021 was a problem. He was saying what President Trump said last week. I mean, the whole structure of that, when you're typing that section out and you're reading it ahead of time, you're like, and last week I heard President Trump say that I could overturn the election, and President Trump is wrong. In fact, I've never heard anything more un-American than that one person can pick the presidency. That is a statement that, I mean, the bromance is over.
Yeah.
Until Friday night, and then Don will call and Mike will say, oh, I knew you didn't mean it. And, they'll get a little thing going maybe a week from now around Valentine's Day. And they'll Lindsey Graham it right back together. They'll McCarthy it right back to Mar-a-Lago. I'm sure, he's being reeled back in, but good for him, at least in that crowd. At least if you're two-faced, you're not just one-faced. So if he's going to say one thing to the Federalist Society and another thing to Trump, well, I'd rather have him say at least one thing publicly. So, we're
it's
slightly better off because that thing was said out loud by that guy.
yeah. I think a lot of us are at the point where the fear that we have when it comes to this stuff is we keep waiting for that moment when people are going to wake up and they're going to see, and this long national nightmare is going to be over. And, we thought that, okay, well, Trump wins or Biden wins the election and the long national nightmare is over and we're good. Trump's hold on the country, Trump's hold on the Republican Party is going to be loosened, that there's going to be one of these moments that is a watershed moment. And, we wait for Mitt Romney, or we wait for, Jeff Flake, or we wait for now Mike Pence to say the thing that's is finally going to, break that grip and wrest everything free from the clutches of Donald Trump. I don't think this is going to do it.
No, I don't think I think wouldn't. You're right. Totally.
Yeah. And we have seen so many people waffle so greatly, that at one, Mitt Romney at one point says this, and then another point says what feels like the exact opposite. Lindsey Graham does the same thing. Are we going to get that from Mike Pence? Is this going to be the type of thing that, okay, he lobs this, this salvo at Donald Trump? Is he going to be forced to backtrack from it for his political life? Because what we've seen is that Trumpism has, fully intoxicated the Republican Party. We talk a lot on this podcast about the events of January 6th and the insurrection, because it's it's such a tremendously significant moment in our nation's history, and frankly doesn't get talked about enough. Yeah. And we've got this January 6th commission that's going on that is being, part of it is includes the work of Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who are Republicans who are sitting on the committee. And this week they were censured by the Republican National Committee for their work on the January 6th commission. And in their statement, the RNC says that, calls what happened on January 6th not what it was, an insurrection, a riot, the lawless act of anti-democratic people. What they call it was legitimate political discourse.
Yes, they did.
Which, if we need a name for this podcast, that would be a lot of fun to just call this podcast Legitimate Political Discourse. I just think that's fantastic.
Brought to you by the LPD. Legitimate Political Discourse.
Yeah. And so it's just one of these, it feels like a gut punch of even while Mike Pence is saying the right things and we're excited about that, at the same time, the party apparatus, the Republican National Committee censures two of its Dick Cheney's daughter. You think about the Republican establishment embodied by the Republican National Committee just censured a sitting congresswoman who is the daughter of a Republican vice president.
Yeah, and is cut from his same cloth, politically speaking. Yeah, and to double down on the weirdness of the patriarchy, the daughters are supposed to behave the way their dads want them to or do. Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President and Congressman Dick Cheney, is censured, led by a statement written by the niece of Mitt Romney. The head of the RNC is Mitt Romney's niece. Yeah. So okay. So welcome to Republican politics and the insider game. Look, I'm not one for trying to explain Republicans' perspectives on things, but I think this is worth noting how dangerous it actually is much the RNC is much the way that Trump was both evil in its intentions and incompetent, and the two go together. What the RNC was trying to say was the January 6th committee is not legitimate because it's only Democrats. All the other Republicans said no. So these two Republicans, Cheney and Kissinger, who both voted for Trump in 2020, do not forget before you break your elbow patting them on the back.
Yep.
Because, all 4 years of him being president wasn't enough for either of these people to say no to him. Only January 6th. I mean, talk about being hardwired in. Only January 6th. As a congressperson, as a conservative, that was what, okay, don't get me going on that, Rob, because I'm ready to get going on that. They're saying, the RNC was trying to say, by partnering with this totally partisan group, you have sort of, because the committee is illegitimate. So they're trying to raise legitimacy issues about the committee. Both, it's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's kind of all they got. Did they do that well? No, they did it absolutely backward. And then what they were trying to say was this partisan committee led by Democrats is now not only investigating the events of January 6th, they're investigating all the stop the steal arguments, which they would argue is legitimate political discourse, right? So instead of saying that, these people are so incompetent and so don't care about what they say in print, they write it up in a way that says we're punishing them for doing their duty, and we are going to call all things that the committee's looking into as legitimate political discourse. So it's even worse than just these people don't understand January 6th. They clearly don't. When they have a point they're trying to make. So now they spent the last 4 days trying to explain themselves. And you're like, why was that so hard to explain?
Right.
Like all you are is the RNC, by the way, is a committee. It's a fundraising and organizing committee like the DNC. So it's the party apparatus. The only things you do is raise money and create a system and structure to support candidates. That's it. If you're so bad at that because you put out a resolution publicly that says that January 6th commission is looking into legitimate political discourse, I mean, they picked the wrong fight. They're fighting about the wrong things. All they did was encouraged, all of America to say to them, what are you talking about? So they're so profoundly bad at propagating their broken ideas. And that in and of itself is just bad for American democracy. We can't have one of the two major political parties. Yes, there are dozens of smaller political parties. We have a multi-party system, but we can't have one of the two primary ones, one of the two that take up 90% of the political ideology and the political affiliation in this country. You can't have half of that 90% be this bad and this incompetent for this long. It's just simply incredible. And this is why a lot of senators and a lot of Congress people and governors are like, oh, don't drag me into having to explain a poorly written, stupid resolution from the RNC. Like that crowd is just, but if you don't know politics, you're like, the Republican National Committee just called January 6th legitimate political discourse. And here's why I think they did. Because a lot of them believe it's legitimate political discourse. I think they absolutely believe that that's what happened. But that's not what they were trying to say in that press release. And the truth comes out because they're that bad at covering up with their true beliefs.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're framing this as just like total incompetence. Because I have worked at organizations at times that have had to issue public statements over controversial things. I have been a part of that process of crafting those statements, reading them, rereading them, debating and fussing over every single word and phrase. I have been in those Google Docs where you see people making comments
Yeah.
and hey, we shouldn't say it this way, and flagging it. And like, I've been through that. How legitimate political discourse
Yes, gets in
made
there.
it through that process is stunning. It's stunning.
It's a tale, because that's not even, I mean, that wasn't the point, right? Like, they added that in, and the stories are now coming out. I've been following some of the story. The stories are now coming out about basically that Google Doc thing, but happening in real time, because the first resolution wasn't going to pass, which was to call them to be removed from the Republican gaggle, to have what's that?
Caucus.
To have them the caucus. Thank you. To have them kicked out of the caucus. That's what they like. That's also just a stupid idea. Like, all of this is just ridiculous.
Right.
Like, what? There is no means by which any national political committee should be saying anything about January 6th other than it was wrong. We have to get to the bottom of it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
we already know, this is what, Mitch McConnell said. We all knew what happened. We were all there. So there's nothing to look into here. We already know. But to do anything else is just a level of incompetence, and shows you that political parties, I know people tend to think that political parties are very powerful, and they think that they're very insular, and they think there's a group of powerful people holding them all together. No. This just reminds you they're not.
Yeah, exactly. What Annie said what Dr. Annie Andrews said about, kind of getting into the room and realizing, like, the people at the table don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. Like this is not always smart, wise, competent people, providing this kind of leadership. Oh, goodness.
Yep.
Doug, let me ask you this. Do you think it was incompetence or intentionality that led the staff of Donald Trump, when he was leaving the White House, to take with them 15 boxes of presidential discourse that belong at the National Archives, but ended up at Mar-a-Lago? Was it incompetence? Did they just not know that this was supposed to happen? Or was this intentional, that they were trying to hide these documents from becoming public in the National Archive?
So what you're getting at was that the National Archives now, through lawyers, had to make requests for these boxes to get them back. They've known it for a while. They've been negotiating for months to try to get these, and then finally sent crews down to Mar-a-Lago to get them, because Trump took things, as many administrations have done. They've taken things. Some people have taken furniture or artwork or something that has to belong and stay at the White House. And papers is what Trump took. Look, here's my take. I don't think Trump took those because he was trying to hide them. I think he took them because he wanted them. And he doesn't care that the National Archives has a right to them. He doesn't care that they belong to someone else.
Yes,
he will
presidential records law.
He will move on those boxes, and he will grab them if he wants them. You see what I'm saying? This is who this guy is.
Yeah.
What he said in that bus on the, about walking up to beautiful women and doing whatever he wants. I just grab them and kiss them. I just grab them by the private. This is who he is. This is who he was with those boxes. He just says, I want them. I want them, and they don't get to have them. Because the stuff that's in the archive, the stuff that's in those boxes that's been reported, at least some of the things in there, is like memorabilia that he wants. It's not like, oh, he's squirreled it away and he's hiding. And if anybody reads what's on this form, I mean, look, Donald Trump didn't read anything he was given in the first place. That wasn't like just summaries. He's famous for having not read. He's like, just tell me, or put it up on a PowerPoint or something. Yeah. So Donald Trump is not a guy who's like, okay, I'm going to go through my papers here and I'm going to make sure, okay, we're going to keep this one. I don't want anyone to see that. I'm going to rip this one up because, I don't want anyone to see it. When Donald Trump covers up stuff like that, he hires people like Mike Flynn to cover up stuff. He hires bit rate lawyers that get arrested and convicted. He doesn't do it himself. No, he is not. I don't think it's him covering it up. I think it's worse for the presidency, which is he doesn't care about that which belongs to the country and that which belongs to him.
Yeah, he sees it all as his. And
yes.
Maybe, I mean, just the funny thing about this is that included in these boxes are the what Donald Trump referred to as the love letters from Kim Jong-un, who he originally had a very rocky relationship with. He used to call the little rocket man, and then we thought we were going to war with North Korea at some point, and then he got all cozy with the little rocket man, and Kim Jong-un became his best friend on the global stage, and they wrote what Donald Trump referred to as love letters back and forth. Those letters included in these boxes.
Right.
Doug, did you ever own? I had this point in college, my freshman year of college, where it became clear that my high school girlfriend and I were not gonna end up as a thing.
Okay.
And I had a box of all the letters that we had sent back, and her letters to me. And I remember one night in a fit of vibrato with my college friends, taking that box of love letters from that girl and burning them in the barbecue pit behind our dorm. Do you think Donald Trump would ever get to the point where he would be like, Kim Jong-un, I've got to extricate you from my life. I'm going to burn this box of love letters.
Maybe that's how he views turning when the the armed guards from the National Archives had to come to the Bitrate Resort and pick up the boxes. Maybe that's how he felt about them. It was like burning them. It's like, well, I don't love you anymore. He also took the letter that President Obama left for him. He took that one and brought it home with him. Look, and again, you could make copies of all of those things and take them. Mm-hmm. If all you did is one of them. He just doesn't care that anybody else should have them. He doesn't care about the Records Act. That's why he tears up memos that people then had to tape back together, because he doesn't care. He does what he wants, and that's all that he wants. And he demonstrated over and over that anytime somebody got in his way, he just disposed of them, just tore them up and got rid of them. He doesn't. So this is, I think, really, if he ever decides to put himself out into public, the public bidding process again to be an elected official, this is the kind of stuff that you're not going to go to jail for destroying the records. You're not going to go to jail. First of all, former presidents are never going to jail in this country. We just need to buckle down and let that be the truth. It's like people with diplomatic immunity are not going to jail for parking violations or for killing people in this country as they have done. That's just a deal we have. Once you become the president, you don't go to jail. So that's just stupid, and that's the deal. So all the fixations about, is he going to, we're going to see him in handcuffs, is he going to be in an orange jumpsuit, that is just fan fiction for some of us who just need to imagine that to feel better about the world. But politics is about the public trust. And when he violates the public trust by taking the documents, by tearing them up, people just need to tell the story. And if he ever decides to run again, people need to ask him, why did you take those things? Why did you lie to these people? Why did you encourage the insurrectionists? Look, at the fundamental level, the thing we need to prevent from ever happening again, whether it's either by statute, which might come out of the January 6th committee, or by just public opinion, is that man, the light of the world, the blessed child of God that he is, should never again be the president of the United States. Right? That he's a danger to the well-being of this country, as he has demonstrated, and as he had demonstrated by election day, November 2020, and yet Liz Cheney voted for him. So try to reconcile that, try to square that circle, try to finish that out. All the things he had done weren't enough. I just got to go for him one more time. But now I will tell you, I will raise my, this thing just, I can't get over it, and I'm unwilling to get over it. And to anyone who did vote for him again, you can change your mind. Absolutely. But you got to explain why that wasn't enough. Not a voter. I'm talking about peers, his peers in an equal branch of the government, who's in leadership of the party that he's in, said, I want him again. Let's do another round on me, Liz Cheney.
Yep.
And
listen,
and if we ever get either of them on here, I'll chicken out, because I'm a person with no backbone at all. I'm just a big talker behind a microphone. But if I didn't, I would ask him, don't you think you have some explaining to do about why you said, give us another round of that?
Yeah. And, there's probably people listening to us who are going, come on, get off it already. Donald Trump is not president anymore. Let's talk about Joe Biden. Let's talk about
yeah, that's true. We should talk about Joe Biden.
Listen. And
he had a great week. We should talk. We should be talking about Joe Biden.
We probably would have if we didn't have an amazing guest like Dr. Annie on the show today.
Yeah, that's right. That's all it was.
Listen, we have to keep talking about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's grip on half of 90% of the political populace, as you said, Doug, is still like firm and impacting what is happening each and every day. And the lawlessness, the callousness that you describe Trump having, which led him to take these boxes because he wanted them, is the attitude that is now infected the entire Republican Party. And we have an entire, our system is in danger because of that. And so it's not just that we're trying to take pot shots at the former guy. We're making commentary on these things because they impact where we're at as a country right now and where we're going.
Yeah, that's I hope. And the fever, the infection that caused so many people to support him has not broken yet.
Yes.
That infection is still, the little red lines are still running toward the heart of this democracy. And this is a bad infection.
Yep.
And it has to be dealt with. To just say, well, I put a Band-Aid on it, he's not in office anymore, it doesn't really root out for people their own, why did Liz Cheney and Adam Kissinger, why did they vote for him again? I mean, they're obviously willing not to support him at some point, but that wasn't enough. Why was that not enough? That's a real fundamental question. And it's fair enough to say, well, I would rather have his policies and his shenanigans than Joe Biden's policies and Joe Biden's non-shenanigans. But I do have to, I got a hard stop today. I like that phrase when people use that in a meeting. Oh, I got a hard stop at 11. I got a rolling stop somewhere around 11:30, maybe 11:45.
Yeah,
I'll just
jump
out while we're rolling.
We're already at 11:05. So
I'll just jump out while we're rolling. People always say that too. They always bring the hard stop up just after the moment when the thing, at least in my experiences with people. But Joe Biden did have a good week. You just see how the political winds, those of us who follow this stuff back and forth, it's like watching a sporting event, and in the middle of the action, you're like, oh no, a bad thing's happening right now. Just give it a minute. It made me feel a little better this week that a few things are going to clear the air, especially COVID and some spending, and Democrats figuring out how they're going to be together come November. That might, things might be just barely okay after the November election. Mark this date and look back at it. Yeah, you're just smirking. You can't even see it. You just think you're like a guy that's already seen the movie, and I'm sitting here saying maybe, just maybe, it's going to work out. And you're like, no, I've seen it. I've been down the road. All right. Well, producer Dan, anything from you?
No.
No.
It was great.
Nothing at all. Okay.
I mean, I could rant for another half hour, but you've got a hard stop. So
I got
7 minutes ago.
I got a hard stop 7 minutes ago. I'm really in trouble here. All right, Rob, anything else from you?
Hey, well, I would just say this.
Oh, comments. We should do comments.
Head over to Dr. Annie's website and throw a couple ducats her way. She's the kind of person we need in Congress.
What'd you call them?
Ducats.
Ducats. throw a couple of ducats. All right. Okay. So David, Barbara, Rachel, Keith,
Tony.
Hey, Dan, can you put Jimmy Hammond's Jr. His comment up? Just for Hey, love you guys. Love your show. Recently discovered you guys. Blessing to you all. Thanks for having these intelligent conversations. Well, he's gotten lucky on the times he's tuned in, huh?
Keith, who's apparently a new listener today.
Yeah. Anyway,
Rachel from Ohio, as always.
Thanks for all your comments. And if you just listen to the podcast, nothing wrong there. But please don't listen on Spotify. We're doing what we can to try to, I just don't want to pay Joe Rogan. I don't want to pay Joe Rogan, and that's how it works. You pay Spotify, and they then give the money to Joe Rogan. And I just think Joe Rogan should say everything he wants. He should turn on his mic and just talk, and no one should ever tell Joe Rogan to stop talking.
Yeah,
they should tell Joe Rogan to stop.
I discovered
being paid.
I discovered on Sunday what actually leverage I have over my two college-age children.
Oh.
When I suggested to them that I had Googled, Spotify versus Apple Music, and was thinking about taking our family Spotify membership over to Apple Music instead. And my two college-age children freaked out at the thought of losing Spotify. And so
everybody's
I feel
got
like
the price. Everybody's got the price.
I know. I feel like I finally found the thing that can influence them now. I'm going to threaten to cancel Spotify. And that will,
Well, and what's beautiful about that is these are adults. These are people of age to join the military and wreak havoc and destruction across the planet. And yet, if you cancel Spotify, their world is over. They could have a Spotify account,
but they've got playlists. Free. They've got saved things. The whole world.
Can't you import it from yours into your new account? I'm sure there's a way. They could even have a free one. Now, would they have to listen to ads? Yes. And then that ad revenue pays Joe Rogan, or they'd have to pay Joe Rogan personally with their debit card every month. So, yeah, they're in a tough spot.
That's why I'm trying to quit too, but it's hard. It's hard to quit Spotify.
Yeah.
Just can't quit you.
Yeah, it's,
like Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un.
What's the name of the CEO of Spotify? His last name is Eck.
Is it Peter Eck?
Okay, for this joke, it's Peter Eck.
Oh no!
I heard this week that Peter Eck said you can't silence Joe Rogan. Peter Eck is wrong. That's my Mike Pence. Boy, that really landed on a.
We should have really honored the hard stop.
Yeah,
Peter Eck is wrong.
Eck is wrong.
Just declarative. All right. Well, so thanks for listening. If you listen on Spotify, don't stop listening on Spotify to us. I don't know, or do. I don't know.
Or do.
Who cares if you're listening on Spotify? You've
follow
already,
your conscience.
Yeah. Follow your conscience. That's gotten you just to where you want to be. So yeah, just keep that one up. But we will see you tomorrow. Dan, who do we have tomorrow? Do you remember on our faith conversation?
I don't have to look up on our spreadsheet.
Well, we're gonna talk faith tomorrow. And by the way, you're listening to this podcast generates $0 for any of us. This is all just a gift to you. So we're not like the others. So glad to have you around. But tell your friends and go over to YouTube, would you? And just subscribe to our channel. We're trying to get to a magic number, which we should have been to a week ago. We're not there yet. So we've got some catching up to do. All right. So we'll see. Talk to you tomorrow.